question number 19, this young man who went to jail at 16 years old ended up serving 26 years until he did the mathematical research to say, hey, something is wrong with this algorithm. It is keeping us in jail. So you can just go across from politics with gerrymandering. That's about mathematics. When you talk about your health, most people that have diabetes, doctors are saying they don't have the mathematical skills to keep up with their medications and their treatment on what they should be doing.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it doesn't matter what it is, it's impacting us in every area of our lives. And we just don't have the mathematical skills to compete. Think about the number one thing that we use in our cars, gas, petroleum. 92% of petroleum engineers come from overseas. More than 50% of mechanical engineers come from overseas. Computer science, we're at over 70%. We are not creating students in this country. And dare I dissect and pull out just the Black students? All right, we're just not making it great in mathematics.
Well, you know what's interesting is to your point, it's not just our kids, but I'll admit I have a special concern for our kids, and I think that to your point, our kids are kind of getting the worst of it. I mean, but really it starts as an American phenomenon, but then it's, whenever America catches a cold, Black folks catch pneumonia, right?
Yes.
And it's interesting that you're talking about this because when I think about mathematics, and my background was in math. I taught math at the University of Kentucky years ago. What I learned about math as a Black man, and this is why what I tell any parent that will listen, is that I found that being a Black man required me to constantly be a problem solver and a strategic thinker, right? If I wasn't able to solve problems, I'd be going crazy because Lord knows we get a stack of problems every day. And so maybe can you speak to that as well in terms of just um, the line of thinking that you pick up from learning mathematics at an early age and how that would help you in just all parts of life, even when numbers are not involved, just the thinking of a person who knows mathematics, the ability to see a problem and solve it, as opposed to doing what we're trained to do, which is to sit around and be sad about it, right? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the problems I had to solve that I noticed when I was a principal was that we did not have enough Black men at the school. I was at the University of Chicago charter school. We did not have enough Black men that were solving problems in education, right? So the mathematics of that was I needed to get in front of more Black men, right? I'm not thinking about it as a mathematics problem at that time. So where do I go? I go to HBCUs. So I went to places like Central State University, and I recruited to have more Black men. And then Black men solve problems also differently than women. Women tend to be, and this is no diss or whatever, it's just what it is, tend to be more on the emotional side and protective of children, where the men are like, let's get it, right? And so what these men came up with to deal with my data, because when students are all freshman year, it greatly increases their chances of not graduating. So they came up with a program called the Malcolm X Learning Center. What the Malcolm X Learning Center did was to require all freshmen to stay after school to get their homework done. We drastically increased our freshmen on track, and we were having 100% graduation and admissions to college, right? And so all of that revolved around looking at the data and looking at the numbers. And so one of the questions I get most when I post Dr. Watkins is that, why do we need to use this math anyway? Wow. And I say, that's funny that you're asking me this question on a piece of white man's technology that use mathematics and computer science to create, right? And the idea is not, and they will blatantly say, you don't need this for a job. But that is not the goal. That's why the work that you all do here at the Black Business School is so important. I have to tell you about one of your families last night. I wrote his name down. Wow. But and you can tell that these were Black business school families. The two little children, when I asked them what they want to be, they said investors. I said, "Oh yeah, I know where you're coming from, right?"
Touchdown.
Yes. And then what they asked me the last time I met, so this person is Anthony Peel. He's one of your families. He has two children, And it seems like they do everything from the Black Business School. Okay, they're on it. So the last time they were at my session, they asked me, the young man said, I want to know about the mathematics of wrestling.
Mm.
I said, okay, I got you. I put together a lesson for him last night, and I started with the mathematics going back to ancient Egypt. And in the temple of Ptahhotep, they have all of these drawings of Black folks in different wrestling moves. And so we talked about torque, we talked about the fulcrum, we talked about how to compute torque compared it to the elbow with the foot. I mean, we just went on last night, and this was from your family. These were folks from your family last night. So just a shout out to the Black Business School, because that is the mathematics. What you're doing is you saw a problem in our community, and you're addressing that problem with very solid states. You've identified that education is important. You've identified that culture is important. And you've identified that we will not win any revolution without an economic base, right? So those are examples of, it may not be that we're doing calculations. And that's when I told the young man. And so I asked him to stand up yesterday. I said, stand up and show me your wrestling pose. So he moved the camera back so that I could see him. And then I had him do a hip thrust to his sister, right? I said, but show me your pose. I said, you see what you did? You lowered your center of gravity. All right. When your feet are spread apart, that center of gravity is directly in the center, right? I say, now, when you do this hip thrust to your sister, that's your fulcrum. And the movement that you have, the rotation, that's what we call torque. I said, so you don't necessarily do those calculations when you're on the mat, but that's the mathematics behind it, right? Wow. And so we're doing mathematics all the time. The spread of a rumor, math. The spread of COVID, math. Okay. Mathematics, you're either putting things together, adding, taking them apart, subtracting, or they're staying the same, stagnant. Think about it. You have a positive slope, a negative slope, no slope. So everything that we do is about mathematics.
Wow, I love that. Everybody, this is Miss Asada, Professor Asada, whatever you like to call her. And just don't call her stupid, because she's the opposite of that. And she actually is going to do a special event tonight that's free for everybody who wants to attend, right here in the Black Business School. And she's going to do what we do in the morning, which is teach the teachers. She's going to talk to parents about what it takes to really educate your own kids when it comes to mathematics. This is important. If we don't educate our kids, nobody else will. We are literally we are taking our torque and the fulcrum, and we are twisting into situation. We're going to use our leverage, use our power, use that Black power that we are born with to just take over this problem. We ain't waiting for nobody else to solve it. We're not waiting for Superman. We have the experts. You can see how smart Miss Asada is. She's good. She can work with the kids. I don't know about y'all, but I wish I could have learned from someone like you, Miss Asada, because I went to school and I just felt blank and empty, and I felt like I was in a penitentiary. It wasn't,
Yeah.
we know the
Yes.
experience of a lot of Black
Yes.
boys, especially. And
Yes.
and before I actually get to that, though, I want to mention to everybody that if you want an invitation to Miss Asada's gathering tonight, which is going to be a private Zoom, you can actually just make sure you're on the text list. I'm going to text the link out. Text the word morning, MORNING, to the number 87948. So text morning to 87948. So I want to talk specifically, Miss Asada, about just I can tell you about my experience as a Black boy in the public school system, and I didn't know it was a systematic issue until I got older. I remember when I was a kid, my mother, when I was 5, I probably have ADHD, I'm sure I could be diagnosed for that. I have no doubt about that. And when I was a little kid, when I was 5, we lived on a military base down in Killeen, Texas, and I went to this little kindergarten on the base. And this teacher, she was about maybe 22, 23 years old. She happened to be a white woman, and she had a meeting with my mother, and she said, "Here's what happened with your son today at school." She said that he would he can be disruptive. He has a lot of energy. He moves around. He would stand up, sit down. He'd be singing. He'd be walking around the classroom and disturbing the other kids. Just kind of what I do now as a grown up, right? And so a 5-year-old version of me without the beard. And basically, she said, so I wanted to trick him. I let him just run around and do whatever he's going to do, and I just kept teaching, and I was going to trap and embarrass him by asking him to repeat back everything that I had just taught the other kids. So she said, so he gets up and he's walking around, he's doing his thing, and I'm just going along and ignoring him. And then when I got done, she said, okay, I said, okay, Boyce, tell me everything that I just explained to everybody else. And she goes, you know, your son repeated back to me every single thing that I wrote, everything I said. And
Yes.
so he was listening. He was just moving around while he was listening.
Yes.
And so what she told my mother was she said, I have to warn you that when your son gets in the public school system,
Mhm.
they're going to label him. They're going to
Yes.
misdiagnose him. They're going to respond as if he's a problem child. They're going to want to put him on medication. They're going to do this and do that. She said, in my opinion, I would not let them do any of that to him. And
Mhm.
so all through school, my mother would fight with the school system because my grades were terrible. I got in trouble all the time. And they wanted, it was like, oh, here, he should take this pill and that pill. My mother's like, no, no, you're not doing that. So I'd like to get from your perspective. I think our community loses trillions in economic potential from the destruction of black boys, systematic destruction, almost
Yes.
like a genocidal annihilation. I think someone Raheem Shabazz had a documentary called Elementary Genocide, and that's
Mhm.
exactly how I see it. Tell me your perspective and your experience.
It has been exactly that. I recall I was in a CPS high school some years ago, and there was this kid. He had an IEP, but he had already slipped up and let me know that he was brilliant, that he can do what I was asking him to do. His IEP called for him to use a calculator, but I wouldn't let him use a calculator. So that means now I'm in violation of federal law, right? But I didn't
Wow.
really care. And so CPS was sent out all these different people. And I said, look, Lindell, show me what it is that you can do, what you've been doing. And the young man could do it, right? He's 17, 18 years at a time. But what I wanted his family to understand, his family ended up rolling with me and said, nah, I see he can be challenged, right? But what that did was to show him that he was more than capable of doing, and he didn't need to have that crutch. And you see that a lot. I had a young student, CJ, some years ago, and CJ just wouldn't do homework for me. CJ was not doing homework. So what I would do is I would just call him up and just have him tell me what it was, and I would just give him his grade that way, right? So I was able to adjust as opposed to giving him zeros for not doing the homework. CJ, I was able to. So now I'm just picking his brain. I would throw something at him and he would do it. CJ was the only student that at like third or fourth grade, I was able to teach calculus to,
Wow.
but he wasn't going to give it to you on paper. And so, but we're not doing enough of that with young boys, but also we're not very kind to the Black men educators as well,
Hmm.
right? Because Black men educators, one, we're not seeking them out, and they have a very important role because young men need to see Black men, right? And as I said, they bring a different dynamic, which is why I was intentional about going out to get these black men. And here's the interesting thing about it. I keep in touch with the first three that I got, right? DJ, Mr. Brooks, and Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis hit me up last week. He's now a principal. DJ is now an assistant principal, and Brooks was in Vegas because he's on a principal track. Now, mind you, none of the three of them were educators.
Hmm.
I went to Central State and got them, brought them to Chicago, more than doubled what they were making. One of them was at a call center. And I told them, as long as you're good to children and you want to do this, I'll teach you how to be math teachers. Right. And so if we really want our young Black boys and our Black men to do well, make it a priority and get to work. As you started off by saying, every problem has a solution.
Mhm. Mhm. It's funny you say that, Miss Asada, because I think back in my life, and I had a few black male teachers go all the way up to college. One was in the fifth grade, one was in the 10th grade, and then I had a mentor in college, but I never had a black teacher. I didn't have any black teachers, and I went to school. I mean, remember, I went to school from age 18 to age 30, so, in college
You were in
anyway.
there a while, huh?
Yeah, I was in there for a minute, picking up degrees and everything and working on my doctorate. And I didn't have one single black teacher, but the three black males that I met in the education system, I never forgot any of them. Like
Hmm.
all three of them left an imprint on me. And I thought about that also when once I went to speak in Syracuse at a middle school, and it was an inner city school that had mostly black and brown kids, and every single teacher in the seventh grade was a white female.
Yep.
And so they had me go and speak to uh, some of the kids that were in, I guess, the class for kids with learning disabilities. And of course, it was full of black boys. And I remember the teachers were so amazed. They said, how did you control them so much? How did you get them to listen to you and respond to you like that? I've never seen that before. And I'm like, well, because I understand them. And, and
Yeah.
and
Right.
and I don't know if y'all do. They asked they say, well, it was so funny. It was me with a table full of white women, and they're all trying to understand, like, what do we do with the kids, right? And they're like, so Dr. Watkins, can you give us an honest assessment of the school? Like, what do you think? I said, well, your school's kind of a mix between a penitentiary and an insane asylum. I said, if I had to come into that school every single day, I'd probably be depressed. I'd be very sad. And then she said something funny. She said, "If you haven't noticed, Dr. Watkins, we're all white females, and we're trying to figure out what to do." And I'm sitting there just thinking, well, I don't know what to say to you other than fire yourself because y'all
Right.
shouldn't just be in here doing all this yourself. You are overseers, in my view. You are just, and that's the interesting thing, right? It's like, okay, we want the black kids in the school, because like cattle, we get paid per head for every child that's in here. We're making all this money, but we don't want people from their community controlling these schools, right?
Hmm.
And that is, it feels very oppressive,
It
very
is.
paternalistic, and
Mhm.
and I'm not saying this to be anti anybody. I'm not here to do that, but I think if you're going to be pro-black, you have to create scenarios where
Absolutely.
we have genuine equity in the educational process, right?
Yeah.
So learning from Professor Asada is a higher priority to me than learning from someone else who might still be very qualified, but they're not culturally qualified. They don't show up with love. Because I can tell you this too, and I'd like to use your thoughts on this. I'm not even going to frame it as a question because you're smart. I'm sure you have something to say on this. I can tell you this for a fact that if you assume I had some intelligence beneath all the ignorance that I probably displayed on a daily basis, when that intelligence peaked out and showed itself, it usually popped out when I was in a space where I was loved. When I felt loved, it
Mhm.
made me want to do better. When I felt loved, I wanted to perform. When I felt loved, I wanted to show up and show out and do well for the people that loved me. When I felt unloved, I would just go back in the shell.
Yeah.
So can you speak on that? I think that the biggest ingredient that our educational process is missing for so many of our kids is just love. What would
Yeah.
you say to that?
Yeah. I mean, Dr. Asa Hilliard said it. The first thing you have to do with children is to love them and respect them. If
Mm,
you can, and that was my requirement. Notice I said when I hired these folks, I didn't care what type of degrees they had. I hired one brother from Morehouse through Teach for America. And you all Teach for America, they have to accept whatever salary you offer them. I said, okay. So she said, you can go as low as 35,000. I said, man, I can't pay anyone 35,000. This was like in 2015. I paid the brother 50,000. He couldn't pass the mathematics assessment, but he was teaching English. I brought him down to my office. I'm a cusser. I brought him down to my office. I said, look, screw that test. Just don't enter into any of my math classes, right? And so he was so relieved. This brother introduced me to his mom, all type of stuff, right? But in that space, he was then able to flourish because one, I didn't do what Teach for America said to do, which was to fire him. Why
mm,
did I need him to pass math if English was his thing, right? The brother had gone to Morehouse, had a great reputation because I also cared about when I was in going through the process of vetting my teachers, I went to their social media. I don't
mm,
want to see you doing any type of craziness because I need you to represent well for our children, right? So there were so many more things that came before the subject or the content. I wanted good people that were going to be good role models for our young people. But with that, it was also a place, like you said, where one, I wanted my team to feel loved. But two, you got to create an environment where the children feel love. I had a student the other day, Vernon. Well, I don't know what topic was going on social media. Oh, it's this stuff, something the student edition, don't judge, whatever's going around on Facebook. And he texted me. He said, one thing which you miss more is that we always felt safe. We always felt safe and that we could come to you with anything. So that piece of, as far as belonging and feeling welcome, another student, Taylor, she was like, UCW, that was the name of the school. She said, it felt like a mini HBCU because it was so pro-Black around there. Right. And so that's how I was able to get results. We had parent-teacher conferences. If parents weren't showing up, I sent my counselors out to their home to knock on the door. Right. And so, and that's why I keep saying every problem that we have in our community, it is solvable. I wanted to solve the problem, so I was relentless about how we were going to get results. And so that's why I'm so disappointed with what's going on in education right now, because it's just not that difficult. I still go into classroom. I'm going to DC the second week in January, into a classroom to teach with students that I'm not going to meet until I get there on the first day. I bet you that I'm not going to have any problems because I go on the south side of Chicago, go into classrooms, say, hey, I'm going to teach this lesson. This is how I'm going to bring it to life. So when I'm hearing teachers talk about how out of line the students are and talking about the parents, so on and so forth, what that's saying to me is that you don't understand that taxpayers are paying you every 2 weeks to do a job. And that was always my philosophy. I don't care what happens at home. When they get to my school, they're my children, and it is my responsibility, not a right. It is my responsibility to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do while they're in my building, especially as a high school principal, because as a high school principal, I'm the last stop before adulthood. I have 4 years to get it right. I can't get it right in 4 years. That's on me as a principal and my team. I had a staff of 78. That's on us. And speaking about that love piece, I got in trouble one time, similar conversation you were having with those white teachers, but I was the principal. And so I didn't learn all the politics about how to be a principal, right? Because I just came in from being a mathematician. So I get in one of my staff meetings, and I don't know what it was, but I say something to the fact, I say, look, if all things are equal, I'm going to hire a Black man teacher over a white woman teacher. Mind you that I have this diverse staff. And so now I done peed off the white folks, right? But then I follow it back up and say, our theme for the year is going to be African contributions too. I don't care what your subject is, you have to do African contributions too. Even Black folks was like, well, what about if they're South African? I said, are they Black-skinned South African? It was like they wanted to run away from dealing with Black contributions. So I eventually got past that, right? And people understood. But it's work getting people to love and to respect not only Black children, but Black families, and to set high expectations. The last piece I say when I got there as a principal, the passing grade, because we did like the passing for all of the classes was 70%. But for mathematics, it was 60%. So I told the white department chair, he ended up leaving. I said, do you think that our children are Black children are incapable of doing mathematics? Why would we lower the standard for mathematics? Said, well, if you raise it, there are going to be so many students that they will rise to the occasion. Parents are going to be upset, whatever. They'll get over it.
Yeah, the curse of low expectations.
Yes.
It's I don't know. I mean, if you if you're an able-bodied person and you show up to a race and the first thing they do is hand you a wheelchair, you ain't gonna win the race. You're
Exactly.
not even gonna think that you are a candidate.
Yes.
And so if you look at life, and life is a race, it's a competition. There are people that are at the top, those who are not at the top. And I believe that those of us who are capable of rising to the top should be challenged to rise to the top. You cannot rise without being challenged. And so sometimes those who claim to be allies to the Black community will say, well, let's lower the bar because we know those people do it. And that's an absolute insult because I don't think that I don't just think our kids can jump the bar. I think that they can jump bars higher than the bar.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it's up to us to decide if that's what we want to pursue. Black excellence. Thank you, Juvenile. I see you.
When I was teaching my students in Lansing, they were, mind you, they were middle school. I had 6th, 7th, and 8th graders because we were non-graded and departmentalized. So our grades were based off of this. The first one was Beniso. These are Akan words from West Africa. Beniso is like the front word. It's the very basic of learning. Then we had Jiriso, Beniso, Boloso, and then Sodai. Sodai is the clear word. So it wasn't about your age as to what level you were in. It was about where were you at with your thinking and your, so I would have a class mix of sixth, seventh, and eighth graders, maybe even a fifth grader in there. But I had these students passing the entrance exam to get into Lansing Community College in mathematics, placing at a college algebra level. Then those same students, I had them taking AP Physics when it was the online version when Blackboard first came out. It was Apex Learning before it was Blackboard, and we were piloting that program. So our students are, I mean, there is no limit. That's why I hate the whole idea when people ask what grade. It's not about what grade. It's about where are you at with your children and how much are your children ready to eat it up, right? Because the amount that they can learn is just ridiculous.
Wow. Well, by the way, everybody who just came in, I'm speaking with Professor Asada Moore, and Professor Moore is actually joining us in the Black Business School, and she's doing a free event tonight at 8 o'clock. It's a private Zoom. If you'd like to be invited, make sure you get on the text list. I will text this link out to everyone that wants to attend. You can get on the text list by texting the word morning, MORNING, on your phone to the phone number 87948. If you can't text that, text 87948 in the word morning on your phone. Maybe you live internationally. Email the support team. They can send you the link as well. The support email address, everybody write this down. We have great support at the Black Business School. The support team's email is support@theblackbusinessschool.com. That's support@theblackbusinessschool.com. And then also tonight, for those of you that are doing stock options, we're going to do an introduction to stock options income tonight as well. I'll send you guys the link to that as well. So we got plenty of stuff going on in the Black Business School. We have other stuff happening this weekend. Every single day we are here. We got the whole educational process covered for anybody that wants to learn. All right. So one thing I wanted to ask you about, lastly, Professor Moore, is so when you talk about mathematics, I saw the statistics that said something like only 3% of Black children are prepared to have a career in STEM.
Mm-hmm.
That they can't even if they said, hey, I want to be an engineer, I want to do something in STEM, they're not even, only 3% of them even have the mathematical background to even consider pursuing something like that. And there are some great organizations out there like the Urban Youth Racing School in Philadelphia, where they call it a racing school to get the kids' attention, but really they teach a ton of STEM, and they have kids that get trained with that. What I don't understand, Professor Moore, is why is it so hard for really great projects like that to get funding at the level that they really should? Like, so for example, I can point to dozens, if not hundreds, of schools here in Chicago that are failing miserably, that are terrible, but they get insane amounts of money every year. There's massive budgets, like you're spending money for failure. You're buying failure.
Yeah.
But then across the street, I'll see another institution like Freedom Home Academy International, or the Muhammad University of Islam, or the Urban Youth Racing School in Philadelphia, or the work you've done, that are doing an amazing job, that are literally almost operating on a shoestring budget. It almost seems like there is a systematic investment in the failure of Black people in this country when it comes to education. So speaking on that, and also just talking about STEM, what do you propose? What do you see as some solutions and problems and solutions in terms of just where the money's going? Because all this is, what we do is driven by money a lot of times, in terms of institutional incentives to get things done. Tell me more about that from your point of view.
Yeah, it's not as it almost seems that's exactly what it is. Why would you invest in the people freeing themselves mentally and financially? We have to think about how much wealth is created off of Black ignorance.
Mm.
Right. Just think about the prison system. Think about all of the curriculum that is created for remediation. All right. So this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, if not trillion-dollar industry, that how many Black workers are at Amazon? Making him almost a trillionaire, right? So when you empower, and you have to think, whenever in any point in history will an oppressor come back to free their people and help fund it? They will help keep us oppressed. They will pay for the continual oppression of us. So that's not going to happen because a lot of times those schools that are doing well academically, they're also touching the spirit. They're also feeding in the historical context. So you really think that they want Black men walking around that's knowing how to use mathematics, that understand data security, that can use AI and quantum computing, that's going to be great fathers and great husbands to Black women?
Mm.
Who's going to fund that? Because then what does that do to their premise? They're already fragile. They talk about white supremacy. It's not white supremacy. That would imply that they are actually supreme. It's white delusion. It's not that they're great or better at us as it relates to economics and things like that. They're more brutal and they're more evil. They will kill for what it is that they want. And we have never been those type of people. Even now, white folks will do whatever it is that they want to us, and we'll bend over and say, Massa, is your foot okay? Even as they're kicking us in our butt. So the solution to that is what you're doing right here. What we're doing, what's happening with some of those other organizations that you mentioned. No one is going to fund our revolution. It has to be us. It has to be parents. Parents have to take this, families have to take this in their own hands. And we have to have a long-term view. This Project 2025 and those different things, the Heritage Foundation, they've been doing this for decades. And not just with one political party, both political parties. They're ubiquitous with what it is that they're doing. And so we do not have long-term plans. We have to have long-term plans that's bigger than us. And we can see if we're on point. Think about how much time you spend on social media and Netflix versus how much time you spend with family planning. That will tell you where your priorities are at. If you're spending more time binging, because I see so much of binging with Netflix, and we know everything that's going on with social media. We know everything that's going on with celebrities, but most parents do not understand how far off their children are as it relates to mathematics and reading. So I don't expect anything from anyone else. I expect Black people to truly wake up and to handle their business, starting with self. If we just looked out for self and family first, that would be enough to solve the problem. But we also have a responsibility. I like the idea of responsibilities. The Black Business School, it is a responsibility to the community to make the community better. All right. And we must do that. And my last piece on it is that nothing is ever going to change. You can go back to Malcolm X, you can go back to Martin Luther King, you can go back. If we don't have a solid economic foundation attached to the revolution, it is not a revolution.
Wow.
So that's the importance of the work that's being here done, which is why I love what it is that you're doing with the Black Business School and just the conversation. Like I say, when those two young people, they're not even like 6th or 7th grade yet. And they say, we're going to be investors. That's the type of impact that we want to have.
Yeah, I love that.
But no one is going to fund us to escape the wrath and the oppression. That's not going to happen.
Right on. I love that, and we love you. Everybody in the chat, just kind of give a digital thank you to Professor Asada. Let her know, lift her up. Let her know how much we respect and appreciate what she's doing. People like Professor Asada are excellent partners in battle. I go to battle with her and people like Brother Nuri Muhammad any day of the week, because that's what's going to get us out of the hole. That's what's going to get us ahead. That's what's going to put us where we want to be. And if anybody wants to know about projects and long-term planning, all of y'all should know about Project 2070. I don't know if you've heard about that, Professor Asada, but I put that together. I wrote this short book called "It Takes a Village to Raise the Bar: A New Paradigm for Black America," and it was based around wealth, education, family, and community. And I did a national tour on this topic, and it really centers around the idea that I believe that a segment of our community, those of us who make that decision to elevate and break generational curses, by the year 2070, I believe our kids and grandkids will be economic leaders of the world in terms of their understanding of economics, their skill set, their strategic planning, and it's a multi-generational sort of plan that's going to hit fruition after all of us are gone. And this is something that I think we need as a people in terms of just kind of having some sort of vision that is going to make us what we're supposed to be. We know what we're supposed to be. You know, I don't have to explain any of that to you. You know
Right,
how
right.
great we've been all throughout history, how remarkable, how critical we were for the development of all of mankind, not
Yeah.
just our people, but everybody. So I want everybody to know really quickly. I'll just let you guys know really quick. Tonight, Professor Asada is going to talk to parents about making your kids into math geniuses and getting them ready for the future. We all know that you can't make money if you can't do math. So we're gonna dig into that and as well as problem solving and everything else. That'll be tonight at 8 o'clock. If you'd like to get an invitation, make sure you're on the text list. Pull out your phone, text the word morning, MORNING, to the phone number 87948. Text morning to the number 87948. I will send you the link. If you can't do that and you're international, just email support@theblackbusinessschool.com. The support team can get you the information on how to join. That's support@theblackbusinessschool.com. Okay, all right. So, Mr. Sada, I want to say thank you so much for your time. It was I really enjoyed hearing from you.
Thank you. I
And
enjoyed
I
being
mean
here.
and I'm gonna tell you, it's if you have a name like Asada, and if you were just, some little mainstream Negro, that would just be such a disappointment. Asada is such a high-powered name,
That's
And
right.
let me ask you this really quick before we go. Where'd the name come from? How does it link to how you were raised? Or
Oh
tell me,
no, not at all. Not raised like that at all. Okay.
really?
Hey, I'm from the projects on the 3855 South Ellis. So nah, my people weren't on that. It was when I got
3055
to,
South Ellis. Is that
yeah,
Chicago?
yeah. That's where the projects used to be at the Madden Park projects. They're not there anymore. But when I got to college and started reading Dr. Malefi Asante, Asa Hilliard, Maulana Karinga, reading the book of Sada. And so I chose an African name, Asada. Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. You chose the right
Yeah.
name.
So
I
I
love.
really thank you for your family. I love, the alertness and the sense of urgency that your family has done. And it speaks a lot to your team. Chanel, she be on it. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Ebonically speaking, she be on it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. In case y'all don't know, Chanel is a big part of the infrastructure at the Black Business School.
Yes.
So shout out to her. I can't
Mhm.
take credit for hardly nothing because
Hey,
you
that's
can't
called
do.
team.
Yeah.
That's emoji, first principle. Yes.
You need a team. You need a
Yeah.
team, and
Yeah.
I want to share that anybody in here that's trying to do something, get something done. A big thing to learn, in my opinion, is learn how to be a great teammate, and
Yes.
then
Yes.
find your teammates, and you will get so much more done than if you
Mhm.
try to do everything by yourself. This is not
Yeah.
about, the chosen Negro, about being the HNIC and all this other silly stuff. No, be a part of something that's bigger than yourself, and then you get to be bigger than yourself. That's
Look,
you can be that's
Sum is bigger than the parts, mathematically speaking.
there you go. There you go. Synergy. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. I love that. Okay, everybody. So we're gonna adjourn for today. You guys know tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. we're gonna meet again. We do this every single day, 7 days a week. So I will see you all soon. And thank you again, Professor Asada. And you guys will have a wonderful day. Take care,
All
everybody.
right. Be
Bye.
one.